because I could have sworn she and her baby brother were asleep in the next room with the door open. I went to check on them and told her to come lay down with me. That's when things started to get strange. The little girl began crying harder and seemed terrified of something in the long hallway. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking she was just upset because her mom had left. But then she screamed, clinging to me and trying to climb onto me like she was trying to get away from something. Panicking, I grabbed the baby boy and ran back to my room, locking the door behind me. Once she finally calmed down, I suddenly heard my name being called. I thought, oh, my mom's home. She can finally see what's going on with this little girl. But when I looked out the window, my mom's car wasn't there. Confused, I went to check the garage. Still, no car. That's when the little girl started screaming again, pointing toward the corner of the creepy living room where there was a big window. Through tears, she yelled, "No, no, no!" and started screaming for her mom. "No, no, no! Mujer allí! Mujer allí! No, no, no! Woman there! Woman there!" I was so startled and panicked that I just grabbed her and ran back to the room, completely frozen for a split second, unable to even move or speak. The next morning, the little girl woke up with bruises on her hands, as if someone or something had been pulling her hard. I told my mom about everything that happened, and that's when she admitted something terrifying. She claimed she used to hear voices in the hallway and by the kitchen, whispering our names. And the creepiest part, my mom and I share the same name, Adela. Hearing our names whispered in the dark was absolutely chilling. Hello, Daisy. These experiences happened at different houses. At the time, we were living in a small apartment with only 2 rooms. One where my mom and my brother slept, and another where my sister and I shared a bed. One night, my sister woke up in the middle of the night, around 2 or 3 a.m. She said she woke up because she heard footsteps and things moving around in our room. When she rolled over to see what was going on, she saw me standing right next to her, just staring at her. Half asleep, she told me, "Go to sleep. It's already late." But I didn't answer. She kept telling me over and over again to go back to bed. But I just stood there, silently, watching her. Feeling frustrated, she finally rolled over toward the wall. And that's when she froze. When she looked toward my side of the bed, she saw me lying there, sound asleep. Her whole body went cold as she realized that whatever had been standing next to her wasn't me. Terrified, she pulled the covers over her head and didn't dare to look back at whatever was watching her. This next story happened to my mom when she was a little girl living in Chihuahua, Mexico. At the time, she was Christian and would go to church regularly with her family. One Sunday, she got upset with her parents and decided not to go to church with them. She stayed home alone instead. While they were gone, she was playing with her dolls in the hallway. The house was completely silent except for the sound of her toys and the occasional car passing by outside. Suddenly, she heard creaky noises behind her. At first, she ignored it, but then she heard it again. When she turned around, she saw something terrifying. A tall white figure wearing a black hood and cloak, holding a scythe. Exactly how people describe la muerte, death. My mom froze in shock. She said she went pale and paralyzed, unable to move. Finally, when she snapped out of it, she ran as fast as she could to her aunt's house a few blocks away. When she arrived, Her aunt's face went pale with horror. She said my mom's skin was every color imaginable: white, blue, purple, green, yellow. She had never seen anyone so terrified. My mom stayed there until her parents returned from church, too scared to go back home alone. Hi Daisy. To give some context, this story didn't happen to me, but to my dad. It takes place in the same house where I've also had my own experiences.
I may be biased when I say this. The Midwest has some of the best ghost stories, and this is one of them. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and recently I opened an email where all of my followers and anyone who finds this page is able to submit their ghost stories. And let me tell you, I have been reading the most terrifying ghost stories, and this is one of them. It starts off with Adriana mentioning that she was new to the foster system at the time and was roughly 13 years old. So Adriana and her new foster family were going on a weekend excursion to foster mom's family farm. Adriana says as soon as they arrived, there was just something really heavy about this place. But she brushed it off, stacked it up to nerves, and went inside this farmhouse. As she's in the farmhouse, she's looking at all of the photos on this wall, and I guess this family had like loads and loads of photos. She stops at one because she sees her foster mom in the photo and asks, "Who is this man next to you?" To which her foster mom replies with, "That is my brother, and he unfortunately passed away in a tractor accident at this farm that we're at." Already really creepy, but it gets worse. Right across the street from this farmhouse and this barn is an old church. So Adriana and all of the kids go and explore this church. And Adriana is feeling really weird about this church. All of the kids are sending her in first because she was the bravest, and nothing happened. So by the time the sun was down, they all went home to the farmhouse, and all of the kids slept in the basement. And Adriana specifically slept on a couch facing this bar area that they had in their basement. Everyone's sleeping when, all of a sudden, Adriana wakes up in the middle of the night. And she distinctly notes that she's not fond of the dark, me either, and is already really uncomfortable because it is pitch black in this basement. But once her eyes adjust, she realizes that there is a man standing in the bar area wearing jeans and a flannel. And I will quote this, "I didn't know if he was wearing a hat or just didn't have a face." After a while, she was like, has to be an adult, has to be a physical person. So she waited until morning. The morning comes, she goes upstairs and is asking every single adult, "Hey, were you in the basement last night? Were you in the basement last night?" And every single one of them said no. And her foster mom was asking, why? Is everything okay? And Adriana said, yes, everything's fine, and didn't want to scare anyone. They left the farm, that was that, and she never talked about it again. But she believes that she saw her mom's brother that night standing in the bar. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me tell you guys a story time of a deadbeat dad who came back 15 years later in his kid's life only for him to try and use them for rituals. So for story's sake, we're going to call my friend Apple because this is not my story, this is her story. So Apple's mom and dad were married for a couple of years and they eventually divorced 3 kids later or whatever, and that was that. Obviously after they divorced, Apple's dad didn't want anything to do with his kids, and then he decided to reappear when Apple was a little bit older than me, by the way. Apple was like 21, right? She was like a big sister to me, but I treated her more like a friend because I could tell her anything and everything. So one day I was sleeping over at Apple's house, right? She had never done this before. She starts fighting in her sleep, guys. I'm a very light sleeper. So anything that happens at night, I hear it, unless I'm extremely tired. So this one day, she starts fighting in her dream, and she's just whooping ass. She's fighting, pulling the sheets off the bed, and I'm like, I wake up eventually, and I didn't know what was happening. So I out of instinct, I started waking up, like, hey, like, get up, wake up, what is going on? It took a minute to get her up, and I eventually rolled and pushed her. She fell on the floor, either way, and that's when she woke up because she thought she was falling in the dream. So it was at night or whatever, and Apple is like, she couldn't sleep, and she's always fighting this person in the dream, and this person is her older sister. And so Apple thinks that her older sister is bewitching her, and apparently Apple started not speaking to her older sister during this entire time, because every single time she would dream of her older sister doing things. But you guys must keep in mind that people sometimes, when they are bewitching you, they obviously take the face of somebody else. They'll never come to you straight, because those people are cowards, you know. Apple eventually wakes up and she calls her dad, right? She's not even speaking to me at this point. She calls her dad that had not been in her life for the past 15 years. She calls her dad and is like, on the phone, guys, like, this lady and her daughter are here bewitching me, dad. Please come and get me. And Apple, guys, packs her clothes. While she's packing her clothes, I'm looking at her like, what is going on? Her mom is sleeping in a separate room that is separate from the house. And her sister doesn't say anything because obviously they don't get along. Her dad pulls up, guys, at 2 a.m. That should have been a red flag. That dad pulls up at 2 a.m. And as she's leaving, I'm like, should I come with you? She's like, no, it's fine. You go back home. What. I knock on Apple's mom's door and I tell her, like, Apple is leaving with her dad, blah, blah, blah. She was like, what? She immediately gets up, and as she gets up, she was too late. Apple was already in the car drove off. Following day, it was, I think, around 8 a.m. in the morning. Apple's mom asked me, like, what happened. I explained to her the story. She's like, you know what, as I'm eating, I'm explaining to her the story, and she's like, you know what, there's really nothing she can do because Apple has chosen sides, yada yada yada. And so as we're eating and talking, Apple comes in the house. She grabs Alice, everything, her clothes, her shoes, everything. And her mom is like asking her, like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm leaving, I'm going with my dad. You guys don't love me, you guys are bewitching me. That's why my life is not going well. I'm 21 years old and I don't know what I want to do with my life. Yeah. Apple's mom just is defeated. She lets her take her clothes and shoes, and she doesn't even say anything to me, and she goes. So Apple's mom accompanies me back home, right? We were also, at this point, we were staying in not the village, we're in the township now. She accompanies me home, and when we get here, my mom is surprised as to why we came back early. Apple's mom explains to my mom that the reason why we came back early is because she's going to work, and Apple's older sister is going to work, and Apple did X, Y, and Z, right? So my mom is like, no, like, just go the traditional route, like, don't let it be just like that. And Apple's mom was like, I'm tired, I'm not about to fight for Apple. Apple chose her path, she's old enough, right? Sharp. A few months down the line, a lady comes knocking at Apple's place, right? I was there that day with my mom, right? And I think Apple's mom was baking cookies and we were waiting for them. This lady comes to the house and is like, hi, like, my name is so-and-so, I live at so-and-so, like, that's near Apple's dad's house. And she's like, are you Apple's mom? Apple's mom is like, yeah, why? She's like, girl, like, go fetch your child, because your child, something is happening with that child. They think the child is sick in that house and she's unable to leave. She's thin as hell, and the only reason that made her come to Apple's mom's house is because she saw her going to the dustbin and back, and she was like, there's no way that person is going to live if she doesn't get urgent medical care. The community people have told Apple's dad, like, take this child to the hospital, and he was like, no, God's gonna heal her. Apple's mom is so stressed. Very same time we leave the house, I also go with Apple's mom, my mom, and me. We go with Apple's big sister is left with the food. We go to the house. At first, Apple's dad refuses for us to enter because he locked the gates. When I tell you, my mom called the police. They called the police. They said that they want to go in, and the police officer was like, well, but you can't go in. I mean, she's 21. Apple's mom was like, before I break this gate, let me go inside and see if my child is okay. So they kept on going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And Apple's dad refused to open the gates. And they were like, if you refuse to open the gates and we find that something is going on with this person, you're going to go to jail. He's like, she's fine, she's fine, she's fine. I don't know what happened. And somebody decided to open the small gate. Isn't most when it comes to a gate, there's a big gate, there's a small gate. Somebody decided, one of the police officers opened the small gate and they realized that it's open. They go inside the small gate. When they went in, they were met obviously by a smell. It wasn't really that bad, but it was a smell of a dirty person, somebody that poos on themselves. And they went inside. As they go inside, they find Apple on top of the bed and she's sickly. She doesn't even know how to talk. She was blacked out at this point, but she was still breathing. So obviously the police prosecute the man because, I don't know what he was arrested for. And they put Apple in the car. They take her to the hospital. When she gets to the hospital, she gets back to life. And obviously my mom is like, you shouldn't let things just slide. Let's go the traditional route. Again, because I am my mom's twin, I'm holding onto her leg. They take me with because I didn't want to stay. They take me with and we get to this lady prophet. And when we get there, it was it was Apple's older sister, it was Apple's mom, it was my mom, it was me. And also Apple was in the hospital, remember, but she was recovering well. We get to the prophet. This lady tells the people that Apple's dad wanted to sacrifice with either Apple's older sister or Apple. And because Apple's older sister is someone that, prays, he decided to target Apple. And even though Apple prays, Apple has a soft spot for her dad. She has a really soft spot for her dad. So even if you were to tell her that your dad is a witch, she wouldn't believe you. So the man was trying to make rituals with her. Unfortunately, he was unable to. But for the ritual to have been successful, actually, the Apple had to die. And when she dies, that's when they can use her spirit to make money. Unfortunately, she was dying a very slow death. And, it happened that lady that was sent by God came and told them, because otherwise we don't know where we would have been. She tells them to pray, whatever. She gives them stuff, whatever. And they pray. And they do whatever she said that they must do. And Apple was fully recovered the following day. She was she was gaining weight well. She was okay. She was ready to be discharged. And she came back. And even though it was witchcraft, she did apologize to her older sister. And yeah, the dad went to jail for a couple of months, obviously, because the mom did press charges against him. What he did was wrong. And another thing that I want to tell you guys is, if you have a parent that left you years ago and they come back and nothing happened, don't trust them. Don't just be easily taken and trust them because they're your parent. You might find yourself in Apple's situation.
Can we show them the older homestead?
Yeah, let's go.
No, it's not. Was that you?
Yeah, that's on either side.
They went to both.
Yeah.
Marie would get in touch with the Anglican Church of England and would request an exorcism. And after hearing about what was going on with Michael, the Anglican Church would say, yeah, that does sound like he needs an exorcism. And so the following day, they would send out two of their best exorcists named Peter and Raymond. And so Peter and Raymond, they get to Ossett, they go to Michael's house, and they observe him. And very quickly, they determine that it does seem like Michael is possessed by at least one demonic force. And so they tell Michael, the only thing we can do here is perform this exorcism, but we need you to agree to it. And so Michael says, okay, yeah, I agree to this exorcism, and so would his wife, because she at this point is just completely unsure what to do. She's just going along for the ride. So a day later, on October 4th at 10 p.m., Michael, his wife, and the rest of the members of this fellowship group, along with Peter and Raymond, they would all meet at this other church in a neighboring town. And as soon as Michael had been positioned in the middle of this group in this chair, Peter and Raymond began the ritual by praying. And as soon as they did, Michael began screaming out in tongues, and he began writhing around, and he fell to the ground, and he began contorting his body in grotesque positions, as if the words Peter and Raymond were...
One of the reasons why I can never work a night shift is because I am scared of what's lingering in the dark. And one of my followers named Chase just confirmed my fear after telling me his scary night shift experience. So Chase told me this was his first job out of college. He was 23, quiet, responsible, and excited to finally have something stable. He worked as an overnight security guard for a corporate office complex just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. You know, like one of those places with long, empty hallways, motion lights, and cameras in every single corner. Chase told me his job was simple. Sit in the office from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., watch the live feeds, and do 2 walkthroughs throughout the whole entire building. Go around at midnight and 1 at 3 a.m. So he told me it was easy money. He told me the first few weeks were normal. He said the cameras were so boring. He'd end up scrolling through his phone just to stay awake. Most of the time, the building was completely still, except for the occasional raccoon triggering the motion sensors outside. But one night, around 2:15 a.m., Chase told me he saw something strange. On camera 12, which showed the east hallway, the one that was lined with the vending machines, the light ended up flickering once, then it stabilized. And for half a second, he thought he saw someone standing under it. A very tall figure, too tall to be an employee. No uniform, no badge, just standing there motionless. He told me he leaned forward thinking that maybe the camera glitched, but when he checked the hallway feed again, it was empty. He didn't think much of it until the motion sensor alarm for that exact hallway beeped. He told me in that moment he froze. The system only did that if someone actually walked through the area. He said he radioed to the desk, the only other guy working that night, but he didn't even answer. So, against his better judgment, he grabbed his flashlight and went to check. He told me the east hallway was darker than usual when he got there. Only one light was flickering, the one that was above the vending machine. He said the air felt colder than the rest of the building. It was like he was walking into a freezer. He told me he walked slowly down the hallway, shining the flashlight from side to side, whispering, "Hello? You're not supposed to be here." But every time he said that, there was no response. Then Chase told me right before turning back, he noticed something. The vending machine glass. It had condensation on the inside, like someone had been breathing on it. He told me he left that hallway fast, back to the security room. He told me he tried to calm himself down, but when he looked at the monitors again, camera 12 once again showed the figure. This time, it was standing closer to the camera, right under the light. He told me he could not make out a face, just a pale shape where its head should be, and dark shoulders blending into the background. He told me he blinked and the figure was gone. He told me he started checking every camera one by one, until he noticed something else. The elevator camera on the west side lit up. The doors had opened on their own, but nobody pressed the button. And the inside light was flickering like something was moving out of frame. He radioed again, but nothing. So Chase told me he pulled up the map of the building, switched to camera 6, the one near the elevator doors. And that's when he saw it once again, the figure standing in front of the elevator facing the camera, not moving, not blinking, but now he could see its face. He said it looked wrong, not human, like a person wearing skin that didn't quite fit right. The eyes were completely white, no pupil, no color, just 2 glowing ovals staring straight into the camera. That's when he told me the feed cut to static, and that was his last straw. Chase told me he ran out of the room, bolted for the main exit, and did not stop until he was in the parking lot. When he looked up at the building from the outside, Chase said the lights on the top floor where the security office was were flickering rapidly. He swears he saw someone standing at the window watching him. The next morning when the day staff came in and reviewed the footage, Chase said all the recordings from 2 to 3 a.m. were corrupted. They were all static. He said the IT team had said the system had glitched, and he ended up quitting the same day. Now, even years later, Chase told me he still has dreams about that monitor. The hallways, the flickering lights, and those white eyes that were staring back at him through the screen. And sometimes when he's scrolling through his phone at night, Chase told me he swears he'll see a faint reflection in the black screen, almost as if there's something still watching him.
Let's read another scary story that was DM'd to me. This one comes from Alexandra. She's like my TikTok bestie. She lives in New Jersey. This is a long story, so let's get comfy. And this is really terrifying too. I actually can't believe this happened to her. When I was about 10 years old, I was having my birthday dinner at a Chinese food buffet restaurant near where I grew up in South Plainfield, New Jersey. We were having dinner when my sister told me she needed to use the bathroom. I had an uneasy feeling from the moment I walked in the door, so I decided to accompany my sister to the bathroom. My sister went to the stall, and I stood outside of the stall by the sinks when an elderly woman, which I assumed was her grandmother, and a small child walked into the bathroom. They went into the stall together. All of a sudden, I heard a voice come over what sounded like a loudspeaker in a very deep tone telling me to get out. Just then, the door had the elderly woman and the child and it sprung open and they were no longer there. I have no explanation for what I saw. I watched them both walk into the stall together and I can't explain where they went. The voice kept calling me a little girl and telling me to leave. I walked into the stall where the girl and the elderly woman were and saw a picture of a skeleton that was placed on the top of the toilet. The skeleton was grinning with an evil smile. I was terrified. I ran to the door and grabbed the handle, and then I remembered my sister was still inside. I said to her, Liz, let's go. I told her to not even wash her hands and rushed her out of the bathroom. I told my parents that we had to leave because there was a voice that came over the loudspeaker in the bathroom yelling at us to leave. And there was a little girl with her grandmother, and now they are gone. My mom asked my sister if she heard it. She said she heard a voice, but she couldn't make out what it was saying. We ended up leaving the restaurant, and I was shaken. 2 years later on Halloween night, of course.
When I was younger, I used to get into a lot of trouble, and that ended me up in jail. And while I was in jail, we would trade ghost stories and tell like scary stories. So this is one of the stories that was actually shared with me from another inmate. Now, he said when he was in another pod, he, was in his cell one night, and basically they lock you down from 6 at night till 6 in the morning. Now, he's in his cell reading a book when all of a sudden he says, out of the little window on his cell door, he sees another inmate walk by the door. But, he thinks that's weird because everybody's locked in for the night who's out of their cell. So when he looks out the window, he sees the inmate walking by the other cells, and this inmate turns, looks at him, and he realizes half of his face is missing. And he knows this isn't an inmate that's like in this pod. And that inmate just walks right into the wall and vanishes. So like the next day, he tells the other inmates, hey, there was this inmate that was out last night walking around. Anybody else see it? And no one seen it, and they thought he was like kind of losing it. So that night, he goes back in his cell for the night, and it's probably 12:30, 1 o'clock. He's laying in bed, and all of a sudden, his cell door opens up by itself. And he walks up to the door. There is no one outside the door. There's no CO, no other inmates, nothing. That door just opened by itself, this locked, heavy metal door. He turns around, and standing behind him is that inmate he's seen the night before. And then all of a sudden, bam, he wakes up, and he realizes he was dreaming, except he can't move. Something is pushing down on him and pushing on his chest, and he can't move, he can't breathe, and, he wants to scream, but it won't come out. And then finally, it just let go of him, and he was able to get up. So he goes out of the cell, and, he starts talking to the other inmates, and one of the inmates tells him, hey, you need to read your Bible and stuff every night and quote scriptures. This will protect you. And so he did that. And he said after that, he never seen this spirit again. This other story comes out of Statesville prison before it had closed down, right? They were getting ready to close Statesville, and there happened to be this inmate that was there doing time. And they were starting to transfer some of these inmates to other prisons. So there were cell blocks that were completely empty. Now, this inmate ended up getting put in an older cell block. And, he gets the cell to himself. In this entire block, there is no other inmates in there. So he's completely alone. And he gets in his cell, he gets settled in and stuff for the night. And he lays down on his bunk. Well, as he's laying in his bunk, he starts hearing whistling. And he remembers, wait, I'm alone in this cell block. So he goes to the bars, and he looks out, and he can see, all the other cells. And he sees this one cell, there's a light on. And that's where he's hearing this whistling come from. But it's odd because, it was lights out. All the cells' lights are turned off after 9 o'clock. So he yells, hey, if you're down there, can you stop whistling? I'm trying to sleep, man. And no response. So he lays back down, and the whistling just keeps going. So he yells again, hey, man, I'm trying to sleep. Stop, cut it out. And finally, it stops. So he finally manages to lay back down, and as he's sitting there in his bunk, he sees something walk by the cell door. And he looks real fast out the cell door, and he sees there's no one there. He can see down, the entire block. There's no one there. But now that light is off. And that door where that light was on, the cell is completely open. And all of a sudden, as he's looking down at the cell, all these cell doors in that entire block start slamming shut and opening, slamming shut and opening. And he said he just started saying a bunch of prayers, and then it just stopped. And that, he said, was the extent of the experiences he had, and then he ended up getting transferred to somewhere else.
What the fuck was that? Bro!
What's going on around you?
I don't know. I'm frozen. I am frozen.
Did the window
Sean.
break?
Let's talk about something scary. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my best friend's experiences because I don't know how I forgot it. It's absolutely bone-chilling, and it really makes you think about how many places in the world are actually haunted. So let's get started. I had this friend in high school, we'll call him Jay, who was an avid ghost hunter. He believed in the paranormal, he believed in the afterlife, he believed in it all. And we really started being friends after the whole Ouija board experience. And one night, he was blowing my phone up. So much so that I actually woke up from my sleep and saw that I had about 30 messages. And what I proceeded to open on my phone was absolutely horrifying. So there's a road about 2 hours out of my hometown called Seven Sisters Road, and it's supposedly very haunted. So the legend goes that 7 women were murdered in the early 1900s on that road, and their spirits never left. And supposedly, if you drive on this road at a specific time of night, your car will malfunction. And some of the more common things that a lot of people say that they see are lights, apparitions, their car shuts off, their car dies, their radio goes out, they hear screaming, they hear whispering. And it's important to note that this is a gravel road in the middle of nowhere. So my friend sends me this video of him driving, hand on the wheel, hand in the phone, talking to the screen, whatever. And he comes to a complete stop because you're supposed to stop and park your car. Immediately his radio goes out as he parks. He starts messing with the buttons, and I'm seeing this all happen via video. Right after the radio comes on, his car dies. And I mean, dies. Headlights shut off, the whole shebang. So now he's sitting in complete darkness in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night. And it gets worse. He starts to hear the gravel start to move. And he says that he could feel the car moving. Not forward or backward, but just kind of like shaking. After that stops though, he tries to turn his car on. The car turns on. Headlights are on. He gets out of the car. He's recording the whole time. He gets out. He shows his car and he starts to notice something. There are footprints all over his car. And just as a reminder, this is a gravel road, so all the dust settled. So these footprints are fresh. And they walked from the front of his car on the hood all the way up his windshield onto the sunroof, all the way back down, and just stop. So obviously he's freaked out. He takes his finger and swipes it through just to show people that they're not old footprints on his car, they're new, and it matches completely to the dust coming off. So he essentially is like, absolutely not, gets in his car, reverses, and drives all the way home. But he insists that it is one of the scariest moments that he's ever experienced to this day. That's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for more.